So you don't rise to the level of your goals, you actually fall to the level of your mornings. And I think most people are just wrecking momentum with how they're waking up in the morning. Like they can't seem to get it going. So explain exactly what's happening in the brain and why most people can't stick to a routine.
Yeah, I think if you've ever tried to build a morning routine, you know the struggle. A lot of us start really strong. We feel energized, we feel committed. But within a few days, those old habits just kind of creep back in. A lot of times that means you're hitting snooze, you're reaching for your phone, drumming up some reason why you'll start tomorrow. And, we really have our brains to thank for that. The brain just craves efficiency and it defaults to what's familiar unless you really intentionally start to rewire it. Yeah, so of course, as you know, ADAM stands for activate, drink, appreciate, and meditate. And what I like about that is you can really sense that it's designed to work with and not against your brain's natural tendencies. Each step of ADAM, each letter, it really targets like a specific neurological process that allows you to jumpstart your day and really work towards building those lasting habits. When you wake up, unless you're, very lucky, most of us don't feel like we're immediately in go mode. There's some sort of transition from sleep. We go from deep sleep to grogginess before reaching some level of full alertness. And that transition's controlled by something in the brain called the reticular activating system. And it really manages our wakefulness and our attention. So physical movement, like push-ups or breath work, what that does is it rapidly increases blood flow, not just blood flow and oxygen to the brain, which does start to jumpstart our cognitive function. And even like weather permitting, right? Ideally, you'd perform some of these outside or near a window. And the reason I think that's interesting is because, the sunlight exposure within, the couple minutes or hours of waking up, that can actually help set your circadian rhythm. So your biological clock is kind of getting on board with the day. And then what that does is trigger serotonin release. That's one of the neurotransmitters or chemicals in the brain that regulates our mood and focus. So it allows us to start to wake up, be in that more positive start of the day sort of mentality. And it suppresses melatonin, which is what makes us drowsy and groggy. So what you see is like activating and going through a routine like that doesn't just wake you up, but it also primes your mood, your focus, and your energy for the day ahead.
And the next steps in ADAM focus on hydration and just gratitude. So walk us through the neuroscience of why these two actions are so important for brain function.
Yeah, a lot of people don't think about this, but after 7 or 8 hours of sleep, your body is mildly dehydrated. It's as little as a 1 to 2% loss of body water that can start to impair our cognitive performance. And studies have shown that dehydration negatively impacts memory, attention, and problem solving. So when you drink water, first thing, you're giving your neurons, those are the cells in your brain, the hydration they need to fire efficiently and communicate better with one another. And I always like this. Dehydration really creates a similar emotional effect to hunger. So when you're dehydrated, your cortisol levels are high and that amygdala, that emotion region, becomes overactive. And that increases our sense of stress and anxiety. But when you rehydrate immediately after waking, you help regulate the nervous system and improve that ability to stay calm and focused. And also, the third step of ADAM, appreciate, that allows us to harness the gratitude, harness gratitude so that we shift our brain's default mode. So the brain actually has a negativity bias. It's kind of an evolutionary trait to keep us alert to danger and bad things. And it makes it a little bit easier for us to focus on problems or the things in our life that are not so good rather than the positives. But when we practice gratitude and we do that intentionally, it really strengthens the neural pathways for dopamine and serotonin. Those are the chemicals or neurotransmitters that help help create those feelings of happiness and motivation. You can do that through journaling, mentally logging, the good things in your life, or giving yourself some positive affirmations. It really doesn't matter how you do that. That can certainly be what you like. But when you do it, you activate the frontal cortex. And what that does is really pump the brakes on that stress-driven amygdala, allowing you to have the mental space to appreciate the good. And again, I think that lets us be less reactive and more in control emotionally over time. And, as you do this more and more, it can quite literally rewire the brain, making that positive thinking a little more automatic.
And the final step is meditation, which you say, we've talked a lot about how it actually creates the most profound neurological changes. So explain how meditation transforms the brain and it can help us or this become this automatic habit.
Yeah, really interesting, important, definitely challenging to do. But meditation is where some really profound changes can happen. Research has shown that increases in gray matter density, so these are like the cells of the brain, in the prefrontal cortex, after meditation are much more profound. So this means what we're seeing is an improvement in the brain's cognitive control center. Again, that's good for handling the emotional challenges we encounter throughout the day, and also self-awareness. And so more gray matter enhances cognitive function, impulse control, and adaptability. And I think adaptability is important, right? We can set out with a great plan, but plenty of things are going to challenge that plan. And so we need to be able to adapt to either stay on course or, maybe change as appropriate. And meditation strengthens the neural pathways between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system, which really improves emotional control. What it also does is downregulate the default mode network, the brain's kind of wandering mind, and the state of that's associated with rumination, dwelling, and anxiety. So it's been shown that even 5 to 10 minutes can promote growth in areas like the hippocampus, again, allowing us to retain information, learn new information faster, be a little more mentally resilient. I think the science of habit formation is really interesting. Very broadly speaking, habits are formed through a loop of cue, routine, and reward. And Adam leverages this perfectly. The cue is waking up. You know exactly when to do it. The routine is activating, drinking, appreciation, and meditation. And then the reward. It's really that immediate boost in energy, clarity, and mood. And this loop really engages the right neural processes to make us increasingly motivated to keep performing these behaviors. So all of that to say, consistency is really key. It's just like brushing your teeth. A well-formed morning routine becomes automatic and it requires little effort or decision making. And the brain's constantly adapting to what we do repeatedly. So I think when we commit to this, again, can't stress enough how important it is to commit, because you'll see over time it gets easier and easier to build those habits that let you reshape yourself.